innovation in action. So I wanted to fire up the audience since we're back at the last session of the day. The drinks are getting ready. You're hanging around for this one, right? So I have action heroes on stage here, and I tried to keep it kind of brief to share little snapshots. I fought the urge for capes. No capes here, and I was like, I'm not going to create names like, Food and Beverage Man or something like that. So Dana in the middle here, we've got innovation funder, ecosystem champion. Sorry if I'm dropping this mic. Funding Scale. So thank you. Proof is in the pudding. It's happening right now. The Scale team was presenting earlier this morning. And then Dave, so we just heard your talk. We're going to talk a little bit more about that because this is innovation in action and what's in the future here. So you're an innovation enabler and you're the pilot plant facilitator. We just saw that great presentation, so we'll keep plugging that one. And then Kristyn, so you're 7 Summit Snacks, and you're the innovator, the scaling business owner. So here's your snapshots for everybody on stage, and I'm your moderator, Matt. So no capes. Food innovation touches so many aspects of the category. We've talked about this. Everybody knows this. This is like traceability, food safety, supply chain, packaging, branding, marketing. This is a very, very interactive category. So innovation can mean a lot of different things. And I think our panelists kind of have that broad view in all those different categories. So we'll unpack a lot of that in this session. So to make this fun, icebreakers, quick intros. This is where we're going to talk about our favorite nostalgia food. And I'll kick things off. I work in the Center for Culinary Innovation, and when they ask me, what's your favorite nostalgia food? It's fried bologna from Grandma's cast iron pan. So that's me. That's what I always think of if I'm thinking of my favorite thing about home. It's fried bologna. So Dave, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I might have to break the rules because I don't know if either of these things are food. But, and it'll date me too. Spray cheese, come on. You got to spray the cheese on your crackers.
Oh, yeah,
so I grew up with spray cheese.
Yeah.
And Pop Rocks. And so you had to be the cool kid with Pop Rocks and wherever you could get them. So anyhow, that's my background.
I love that. Yeah, Dana, go ahead.
Mine goes back to my childhood, and it was kind of when the first convenience foods really came out, and me and my best friend Rebecca would save up our money. We'd have a sleepover, but we'd walk to Safeway, and we'd buy a 2-liter bottle of Tahiti Treat, which I am certain that red dye is still within me, and McCain's Deep and Delicious cake. We did not have to bake that.
Deep and delicious.
It thawed by the time we walked home. It was amazing.
I love that. Kristyn, yeah?
Yeah, I think I'm going to jump on the fake cheese trend, and Kraft Dinner is one of them. But on top of it, it's not nostalgic to me, but it's a nostalgic product. And the Cuban Lunch chocolate bar, which came back, which I was a part of, is a just really good chocolate bar. And I love chocolate. That's why I have a company based around that.
That's fair. And I think it's interesting because these are some kind of interesting, innovative projects like spray cheese from how long ago, right? How innovative are these products? At the time, and then even red dyes, and are we moving away from synthetic dyes and into natural dyes, and what does that look like? So this is all very topical for this conversation. So okay, we did our rewind on nostalgia. Now let's fast forward. Our first question: fast forward 5 years. What's on the way in the food industry in Alberta? What's one way the food industry in Alberta will look fundamentally different? So in 5 years' time. Let's go reverse. Kristyn, why don't you go and lead us off on this one?
For me, there'll be more businesses making food here. I see and live in the ecosystem of farmers market to the first $500,000 that you earn as a company, and that making those products here in Alberta is very challenging at scale, and I think that there'll be a more well-developed industry here in 5 years.
That's amazing. I love that trend. That supports everything we've been talking about today. Dana, in the middle.
I think for me, it's definitely aspirational. I want to see us starting to talk about a food system rather than just food and agriculture, or agriculture and food, and seeing just kind of, I guess, more equity along that, because as a funder, we definitely see a little bit of disparity in that, and so I'm working to make that just more inclusive, I guess.
More inclusive, more equity with groups you're seeing kind of similar folks getting funding, but how do we actually make it more inclusive and supportive for these groups to come? Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, Dave.
Yeah, so I like that. I like both topics, really. But, AI, man, there's so much that's going on, and kind of how people are going to make decisions, how retailers are going to make decisions, how shelf schematics are going to change dynamically, how people are going to analyze their sales information or assess markets. It's really, going to really change both how retailers and distributors and food companies operate their businesses. So I kind of think that seems to be the easy answer. But really, I like the more sophisticated answer that you had brought up, both of you, really, in terms of, particularly in Alberta, the food ecosystem that we have coming along here, right? We've got lots of supporters in the food ecosystem, and so I think that's definitely unique and special for Alberta.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've got a lot of opportunity. You got all the right supports kind of in the ecosystem, and then you've got scale starting up to kind of plug us all together in a really dynamic way. I'm excited for that, but you can't miss AI. I mean, we had the afternoon sessions, and I had so many conversations kind of afterwards to say like, whoa, like I didn't think about it in this way. What a great learning opportunity for my business. We're searching for things through AI now, and the more we feed it, the better it is. So what does that look like? Okay, and so this one kind of follows on, Dave, from your last presentation here, consumer behavior shifts. So what do you think is real? What do you think is misunderstood? GLP-1, great conversation about that, nutrient density. Are there fads that are going away? What's your take on kind of these, like what's going to stick, what's passing away, protein to fiber trends, anything you want to talk about here?
Yeah, I kind of have to go back to my last presentation a bit, but not repeating it. There are some tectonic changes with how shoppers are shopping, with how they're interacting with their food and their families, and that will continue to grow. The economy, with less disposable income, and as consumers are kind of dealing with the balance of value, right, price and quality. And so I think those are kind of some of the things that people are going to be kind of challenged with. But there's also solutions to some of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the challenge for the consumer to see the value. If we're going to launch new innovative products, what is that? Yeah, the value proposition that helps enable them to make that choice. And are they overwhelmed with label fatigue, organic, non-GMO, you name it? High in protein. What does that even mean? Does the consumer even know that there's some backing to that? The food scientists know, but the consumer probably doesn't know.
Yeah, and retailers, right? Retailers are probably leaning into private label more because that provides that value equation. Private label's kind of growing in its sophistication. And so, there's another competitor on the block.
Yeah, that's fair. And then, Dana, go ahead,
I was even thinking that private label has changed so much because I remember when Superstore first came out and No Name brand came out, and I remember nobody wanted those yellow boxes in their houses. And it's come around now where you're looking and you're seeing the value, and it is a high quality product rather than just, a low price quality. So I was going to say that one, affordability is always going to stay the same. It might look a little different. Some of our speakers this morning talked a lot about trends and dollars and what's happening in the pocketbook. And so one, I think that MNP spoke about was kind of that better for you or that healthy category. And so sometimes I think that that's a bit misunderstood because you can see all those health bars that are ultra processed with crazy ingredients. We have no idea if your body is absorbing any of it, and it's out there versus, kind of that simple food and you juxtapose sort of what is healthy food, what does that look like, and the need for quick convenience. Because I can tell you of a mom with a young one, I spend way less time in the grocery store than I ever did. I'm ordering, it's getting delivered. I'm not touching my food, even though I know it. And so just understanding how you balance both of those.
I think you nailed some consumer behavior things
and
there.
Like,
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is my space that I live in, and I think what both of you said is true in that we have less money to spend as a consumer. And I think that the price of entry now is that you almost have to have some protein credentials, some fiber credentials out there. The consumer is so overwhelmed. They are so confused about what to purchase. And so those to some degree, they are looking at whatever the biggest circle is on the front of the pack there, but they just don't understand. And I think one of the most underlooked or underrated categories is wholesomeness. And I saw a post on LinkedIn about this a little while ago, and like using Cliff Bar as an example is like they're untouched and they have a pretty wholesome ingredient line as a company, and because they were able to scale and they can buy ingredients at such a low cost and turn it around, it's affordable still as well. And so for businesses like myself, where this is exactly the space we're playing in, some value added, high quality, well sourced ingredients to make a product that fits the occasion that you're looking for, but we're still at too high of a price because of who we are as a business and the purchasing power that we just don't have right now. And so we get the tension of, okay, should we be jumping on the protein train? Maybe that fits our brand values or not, or should we be keeping to our core of like wholesomeness? And so you can only chase sometimes one trend at a time. And that's kind of the tension that a lot of businesses, those smaller businesses are feeling right now.
Yeah, I could see that. It's the consumer behavior side of the juxtaposition of like high processed, they're pushing back on where's the wholesome food, but then the practical realities of what are we actually buying in the moment to serve a need. It probably is very processed, and what does that even mean is a nebulous concept in and of itself. So yeah, consumer behavior is really, really fickle, and picking your moment. The Cliff Bar example is a great one. They hit it early and they stuck strong on the bar game. Yeah, we talk with lots of companies interested in that. I want that convenience format. I want to be on the shelf, but it's an ultra competitive space. Any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there's this impetus to kind of chase something that's interesting. Right? How can I put protein in something? Yep. But I think you also have to balance that with what problem am I solving for the consumer, right? Am I just kind of doing something because I've got a formulation that I need a consumer for, and I hear I should do this? So, it's always kind of thinking about how is that helping the consumer in their journey.
Yeah, solving a problem for the consumer. Yeah. I love that. Okay, we'll go to the next question. We are open to questions as well. I should mention that. We have a few prepared here, and I can maybe stop after the next one, and I'll look to the audience if you guys have any questions. So is it nutrient density with GLP-1? Is it, high processed foods? Like, what are we talking about? That sounds interesting for your business. We are open to your questions. So we'll do another one here. Where do you see the biggest gap right now between what's possible in food innovation in Alberta, so within the Alberta context here, and then what's being commercialized? We've seen the great supports, but now, what do you think are the gaps? Each of you have very distinct roles and views here. So do we do you first, Dave, last?
I don't know, but
Kristyn, maybe next?
Yeah,
Let's go down.
money.
Yeah, money.
As a business living in this space, access to capital is the hardest thing that we have, and we are trying to go from doing something very micro scale to doing something pilot or mid scale, and finding funding to do that and make that happen is more challenging than it seems. And so but I do believe that once we can get there, that to process our stuff in Alberta, to grow the business that we can then export our products from Alberta here, there's a huge opportunity to do that beyond pulse, beyond meat. There's a lot of value-added products in Alberta and businesses that can process here, but there's just not the infrastructure. And so the infrastructure needs capital, and the capital we need to get that in somehow. So that's what the life I'm living right now.
Funding side, okay. And then Dana, what's your view?
Well, as a funder.
Yeah.
And again, we are in this position where I fund things, just not capital and infrastructure that way. But the thing I see a big gap in is, I think, is the not sexy stuff. And we talked about a lot of that this morning. It's, dealing with legacy infrastructure, and when do I adopt new things? How do I become more efficient? How do I spend time on doing those things, whether it's adopting AI or getting a new packaging machine or any of those things? I think I keep thinking about it, and how do we fund that future food system that's resilient and efficient and is going to continue to provide us with affordable food and safe food in Alberta? And so that's kind of what I am thinking of, and it's not sexy. I don't know if my bosses are going to like it,
right,
but that's kind of the way I'm going.
I think that's super fair, and I think that's in some of these questions where what are the unsexy things but are so practical, and a lot of times it's like operational excellence. It's better inventory control, and that's not a great sexy innovation, but boy does that help the business. Dave,
Yeah, I think this food industry we're in for consumer packaged goods is really complex. And I think that complexity's here to stay, and in some ways it gets a little easier, in some ways it gets harder. It depends on the size of the business that you're in. And so I would say that complexity is one of the things. There's emerging food regulations, there's how do I get my product on a grocery store shelf, or how do I keep it there? What does that look like? And so I would say that that's kind of one of the things that comes to mind for me. Now, that being said, I'm really proud of Alberta and the ecosystem that we have evolving. And when I think about obviously the Alberta Food Centre and the solutions that we provide for emerging and mid-sized and thriving companies, but I also think about my friends at Venture Park. I think about AFPA and the new program, the Innovators. Like I think that AB scale is fantastic, right? Because we've got multiple pathways to help food companies and emerging food companies kind of navigate the way through, and so I think that's going to help with the complexity part.
I share your view. I am an eternal optimist, if you know me, and I'm amazed that Scale came together. I think it's going to be a big one because there are a lot of supports, but you chat with folks and they said, "Oh, I had no idea you did this," and we're in a great point now, actually, in the next 5 years. I think if that's what we were talking about, the biggest gap right now, I think we're starting to see it solved, and we're moving towards and in the right direction. And Dana, great opportunity, older infrastructure ready for investments and expansion, and then maybe growing Seven Summits, chocolate business, which we all want. Any questions as we're going along? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so my name's Brock, and this is my business partner, Sagar.
We've met, yeah. Awesome.
Protein innovation. So basically what we're doing is solving upstream off flavors for plant proteins as well.
Yeah.
So, for us, we wanted to come here, number one, to find out what Alberta's doing, because we're from Saskatchewan. So the thing for us, though, is, all of this is great. There's many, the presentations, but for us, it is the funding as well, right? Because it's like, there's all of these things, hypothetically out there in the ecosystem, but where we're at now, before we really start with all of the AI and growing these things, it's the funding. So a lot of it's grants, right? So we're looking at grants within Saskatchewan, which is fine, and then coming to Alberta and looking at, the food center as well, and how we kind of break into that, but get the funding, also have good partnerships with people, and it's a little bit of a confusing. That ecosystem is confusing.
Okay.
So if you could speak a little bit on that, maybe things that we that you have learned, or good places to start, people to talk to, or maybe even your experience with how you've gone from this position to where you are now.
Yeah, so question, ecosystem navigation, and even like interprovincial ecosystem navigation is a very good point, and opportunities to work together as prairie provinces, which I do like. I'd like any opportunity for the prairies to work together, absolutely. That's a win for all of us. We're growing the same things for sure. You do have the ecosystem navigators kind of in front of you. We're all part of it. And so we all kind of steer you in different ways. But yeah, Kristyn, if you had thoughts, I guess, as your business maybe to start us off and what it was like, or any tips.
I think sometimes it's like chicken and egg scenario, especially when you're applying for those, like the government grants, and you have to have some traction, but you also have to be able to prove your business case. And so just finding in your situation, finding a partner, like potentially myself, to be working with, to say, hey, I might be able to use your product. Let's do a test. Often the final end consumer, the final processor like myself could apply for the grant that then says, hey, we're using this company as well. And so that's how I've tried to navigate it a little bit in the past, and a project that I'm working on right now, for instance, is doing that. The other thing is working with NAIT. There's both the food center in Leduc, but also NAIT as well as the Culinary Center of Innovation have been a great resource for us in particular at Seven Summit Snacks. So they're both agencies are able to advise on potentially, I feel like their value comes from, hey, that hand-holding piece of saying, I'm looking for protein. Who are you? Who's looking to sell their protein? And they can do a little bit of that matchmaking. So I think it's being connected to the ecosystem is really important that I find as a business owner.
Yeah. Dave, did you have something there? I saw you.
Yeah, I do. And I was having this discussion with Ryan at FCC a few minutes ago. And I think Andy and I were talking about it a little bit. There's this opportunity, and this is a great forum to get a sense for the financial ecosystem, right? If you look around the room, you've got ATB, you've got FCC, you've got the Government of Canada,
EDC,
you've got EDC, we've got SCAP programs. Like, there's lots happening. I think for food companies, it's ask a lot of questions, get to know who's who in the zoo, understand kind of how all the parts and pieces fit together. And so talk to lots of people, network heavily, and then use the ecosystem partners like the navigators and others to kind of help explore what that looks like. But you're starting in a great place.
I was going to say, you're doing it right. You're here right now. I think sitting there was the best move you could make. Dana, did you also have anything, or you're good?
I echo most of those things. It is about doing the relationship building, and at the end of the day, although most of our programs are geared for Alberta-based companies, not all of our R&D is. It has to do with impact in Alberta, so we do fund people from around the world, and more,
So if I'm going to create 3 jobs because I'm going to do it here in Alberta using your protein, then that's the kind of value chain that they're looking for.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the question. Anybody else have thoughts? Oh, okay, Colin, yep.
Yeah, I'm just curious. It's interesting to see protein sort of at the top of the zeitgeist here. And it makes me think back to probably about 5 years ago when meat alternatives were the zeitgeist. And
Yep.
I'm curious, how that story has played out for groups that you've worked with over the years. Are they now dusting off their business plans because protein is hot again, just in a different way? What does that look like from your perspective?
Okay, I'll repeat the question here. It was we're going on rewind. So we're going back to when plant protein was the thing. We were all about alternative protein. And sort of the question is the companies we've been working with, or who we've been working with and their experience. And now protein is the thing, but not necessarily plant protein. What are they looking at strategically? Is that helping them at all or hindering them? And in any experience with companies we've worked with, I agree for myself. Yeah, everything you said is kind of nailing it. It was plant protein. A lot of funding was going towards plant protein, and a lot of new brands were really focused on that. And then investment kind of trickled off, or a lot of brands kind of died off. I think we talked about it. Alternative milks have been the one sticky one from the beverage side, that oat milk has really continued along. But yeah, the question is along the protein train. And yeah.
Well, and I think what really fell off was meat analogs, plant-based meat analogs. I think protein has always been there. It's just that format missed the mark. There was a lot of hubbub, obviously, around the Beyond Meat burger and the neat science there. And one of the things I laugh about is people feel like that was an overnight success, but that was 20 years in the making where they were bootstrapping to figure that one out. But obviously, we didn't hear about that. I think protein's going to stay. I think that we're not going to see people trying to eat 150 grams of protein a day because your body does other things when that happens. But I think people are concerned about, especially with the GLP-1s and the Ozempic effect, protein is so important. So we're not seeing that muscle wasting. And that's part of an aging population as well. So I think convenience, I think taste, and I think, again, product development for that convenience, not just everybody wants a burger.
Okay, I like that. The nutrient density concept also comes up, and it kind of follows along with protein being the headline there. Dave?
Yeah, well said. It's when I think about the meat analog, was it solving a consumer problem, and was it long range in terms of its kind of what it's doing? Maybe not so much as what we're seeing with foundationally, how these multi-generational shifts are happening, the different kind of interest in protein and fibers and pulses. There's a few things happening there. The Environics study that I looked at recently, showed that it's very much multi-generational now, right? So this is not just kind of one group. It's different kind of groups trying to solve and think about nutrition density. I think it's very different than things I've seen in my career.
Fair. Kristyn, any thoughts?
Nothing to add. No.
Nothing to add on that one? Okay, that's great. Yeah, and I kind of segued a little bit into the nutrient density conversation as well that we've discussed. Any other questions? Yeah, go for it. That's a great question. It's that, managing your core business, your core products, but then how are you dabbling in the trends and keeping your launches and staying relevant? And it probably speaks a lot to your brand strategy. Convenience format specifically, that's a really good point about being eye-catching. It's new. It's a new flavor, right? Yeah. Any thoughts on the trends, chasing the flavors?
I think it's such a great question, and there's a couple different answers depending on the size of business you are. And so if you're a multi-million, billion-dollar company and you've got teams working on that, you're gonna get it out there. You're gonna be first to market because you already have space in the store to be able to do that. And the small and medium-sized businesses, to convince your retailer to get it on the shelf, and the time it takes to get something on shelf just from a process and listing perspective is so long that and expensive that you have to really know it's going to work ahead of time. So I think that there's space for innovation, and that quick innovation at the micro level in your farmers markets, in your made local programs potentially. But if you're in that, again, medium-ish size business, when you're in, again, a lot of 200, 300 stores, grocery stores across Canada, it's going to be very challenging because the whole time to get it on the shelf is going to take a year. And so how do you know if that jalapeno pineapple is going to be still relevant in that point of time? So you have to step back a couple steps, unless you know that you've got an amazing online presence and you can really leverage it that way. So maybe your online consumer, you have those really hot flavors, but as a limited edition, but then you're going to do a little more vanilla for Sobeys or for Co-op or something like that.
Yeah, I got to jump in on that because I still am a retailer. It's going to stay with me forever. So I think a lot like a retailer, and I keep looking at Gary in the middle of the room here, the rainmaker in Alberta for driving innovation and small food companies' growth. But when I think about that, and I think about a category manager's decision, really understanding the category dynamic and how they're considering that category, what fits in, what doesn't, is flavor range important, or what part is important. One SKU is not going to work, right? Because you're going to have one SKU, a lone soldier on the store shelf. You probably need a handful. I don't know what the magic number is, but it's not 1 and it's not 8. And so it's kind of relevant for the business. And to make sure that there's good performance, right? Are your packages per store per week kind of working? Because, as soon as you've got an item on the store shelf that's selling not too many packages per store per week, one or half of one, that's the first thing that's going to get cut by a category manager. So, make sure they're high performing items, Make sure you don't go wide in terms of your assortment, kind of prove those out, and it'll make it easier to kind of sell things in to category managers and grocery stores and distributors, right? So it's not just the category manager, it's the whole ecosystem that's looking for performance.
So is it like, do you pilot it somewhere in a smaller scale to prove it out so you can show this?
That's exactly what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to test it with your fans, your raving fans first. And even just in the experience of the 5 flavor SKUs we have, it's the 2 that you would think are most popular are the ones that sell the best on shelf. And they're the, not more boring, but they're the most understandable of the 2. And the 2 that people are like, oh, I can't say that, or I don't know what that is. They just don't sell as well because people are going for their peanut butter flavor. They're going for the thing that they know and they love, especially with, like we said, the constrained income that they have. I have X amount of dollars to spend on an indulgent treat. I'm going to buy the thing I know for the most part versus I'm going rogue and going to try something new.
And then placement on the shelf probably drives a lot of that decision. And if it's convenience, again, does beverages help? Is it easier to launch a new beverage flavor? Dave, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, you're baiting the audience here. Okay, so my key message is, and I learned this lesson early on in my career, make sure you're solving a consumer problem. Don't have a recipe or a formulation that's looking for a consumer. And so I've been in this business a long time. And my very first job was making private label products for Safeway and Lucerne. And a food scientist had the best flavor of Tetra Pak punch. And I was so excited to get that thing on the store shelf. And it was an epic failure. So I kept it with me. I keep this thing with me. And I can't believe it hasn't leaked. But black licorice punch. And so, I was kind of the champion of it. So we launched it and printed a bunch of packaging. And it sold like shit. And, that was the last production run that ever happened. And I'm keeping this because I keep it on my shelf as a reminder that you really need to be thinking about the consumer first and not your formulation.
That's brilliant.
Sort to follow on to that, because you had said something, and this is more an anecdote from a friend who works for a large multinational, is they actually aren't the ones who are bringing the new flavor. They wait for the small and the medium size, and they follow on because exactly their production runs are so large. The packaging purchasing is so large. And anytime any multinational I know that's done that, the exact same thing has happened. Just you've got pallets of packaging that's garbage. So innovation is happening in this room with the people who are members of AFPA, and you're getting swiped or whatever from these large multinationals for being innovative. So I don't know. We digressed from quick convenience, but I would say all the multinationals. If I go into 7-Eleven, it's the same brand that I was buying when I was 10 to now. And then it's all the local products that are the cool ones that are hitting on trends.
Yeah. And I think that, that's another opportunity as well, just from the processing standpoint about really big batch sizes and then fragmentation in the consumer market. And is there an opportunity for processors to think more, how can I be more nimble? And maybe I don't want to do really, really, really big batch sizes, and I want to maybe have smaller tanks, and I want to do smaller batch runs so I can stay with the trends. Or work more with our SMEs who are launching, and they're the innovators. They have the pulse on the market. Okay, these were great questions. We got to keep it going now. I do have more. Do you want me to wrap up soon?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, let's. That's clear. Thank you, panelists. The drinks are ready, so we don't want to stand in the way any longer. Thank you for your time. This was excellent. The show and tell was awesome. Our action heroes for the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.